We're all imperfect, and on this podcast, I'll be chatting with a variety of interesting people who are willing to make themselves vulnerable by sharing their own struggles and imperfections.
I did ultimately make a choice about whether I wanted to be a woman in India or a brown woman in the world, and which was the tougher of the two.
Gosh.
And which would be a better life for me.
I'm Hugh Van Kylenberg from the Resilience Project.
And I'm Ryan Shelton from My Mum.
And I'm Josh from Hugh's mum.
And this is The Imperfects.
Well, here we are, and we are back in the studio.
Great, we'll definitely keep that in. Well, here we are, and we are back in the studio.
Yeah.
It's true, we are back in the studio, and it's really nice to see you.
We've been on tour, and now we're back in the studio as my reference there.
yeah,
we're
yeah.
back in
True.
it. That feels comfortable.
Feels really nice.
Lovely.
We get an incredible guest today, Pallavi Sharda,
Yep.
who was in fact the first ever Australian woman to lead in a Bollywood film.
Well, but that's the thing. It's like we were sitting with Pallavi, and in Bollywood terms, it was kind of like sitting with like Julia Roberts.
There'd be a billion people around the world who would know
Yes.
her movies.
And who she is.
While she started in Bollywood, she went on to star in a huge Hollywood rom-com, Wedding Season. She was in the Netflix hit The One. She starred in the amazing Australian series of 12 and recently has been cast in the Australian version of The Office, which is like extremely exciting. So
Can't wait to see that. Yeah.
She's an absolute superstar, and we just had the best conversation with her. It was amazing.
She was the best.
Before we do that, before we chat with her, which is coming up very soon, I promise, I just found something the other day that I can't not share with you guys.
Okay.
I actually found the first ever notes that I took in the first ever meeting that Ryan and I ever had about this podcast.
Oh, handwritten notes.
Handwritten notes from our first ever meeting.
Oh, and we just to talk
like-
about doing a podcast.
Potentially, it was our first ever chat about what it might be.
This is great. I mean, I'm kind of a bit nervous. This feels like this will be embarrassing.
Well, it's mainly embarrassing for me.
Okay.
I would say I think you come off quite fine. But also my note taking. I rarely ever take notes. I think I was just trying to impress you.
I know, I've never seen you
Yeah.
take
No,
notes ever.
I think I want to impress you. I have I've written stuff that at some points it's like, oh yeah, that's something you should write. Other stuff I don't like. I wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
There is no. If you'd asked me a minute after I wrote it what that was about, I'd say I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think that's often the case when I write notes as well. Often
Yeah,
I'm
true.
I'm writing notes, never look at them again. I've never met a better note taker than Bridget, our producer.
Yeah, true.
She's like absolute maximum level note taker.
She writes
Yeah.
a stunning novel every single time she opens her book about what's just happened.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes she's just talking and like she's having a conversation, and then you look down and her hand's writing something down. It's just like constantly writing things down.
And the next day it's a fully published book.
Yeah, fully published, leather bound.
Yeah.
It's very efficient.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear the notes. I'm kind of terrified, but okay.
So the heading is podcasts.
Yep.
Plural.
Plural.
Yeah.
Wow, aspirational.
Now, underneath it writes, maybe this is the theme we came up with early on. It said, what life is really like, okay? I don't know why the okay is there. I'm not sure about it. It says, So
okay.
I think it was like,
Well, probably because we were trying to speak to the youth of Australia. What life is really like, okay?
yeah, maybe that's it. Or
Yeah.
maybe I wrote that as in like, what life is really like. And then in my head, I'm like, come back to this. Is this okay?
Yeah.
Oh,
Put
yeah.
a pin in
Sure.
that, okay?
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks in these notes. I'll just give you guys a heads up.
Okay.
So point 1, 6 episodes over 12 weeks.
6 episodes. Oh, yeah, that's
Okay.
pretty good.
Which is what we did.
Fortnightly release schedule.
Yeah, and that's what we did for the first season. It was
Did
6
we?
episodes. Yeah, we did 6 episodes. Oh, not over 12
Not over
weeks.
12
No,
weeks.
definitely not over 12
About
weeks.
12 years, I think.
Yeah.
Now, so the next point, approved by a psych. Now, good. That's good. The add-on is odd. Approved by a psych over lunch.
Oh, what? So we'd catch up with the psych over lunch to approve the episodes?
Maybe we thought it'd be fun to catch up with the psych and have lunch with them.
Do you think that's
Every-
probably because we couldn't pay them at that point to do it? So
Oh,
we
yeah.
thought lunch should cover their
That's-
expertise.
Could be that.
The next point, probably don't need a producer, just a sound tech.
God, how naive we were. Well, hence releasing 6 episodes over 10 months or whatever it was. Probably don't need a producer. Yeah, probably do. Definitely do. Need many, turns out.
The next bit's incredible. The next bit is potential guess that we listed down.
Have we listed names?
We listed names, and we've
God.
actually had 4 of these people on. So, potential guess. Dustin Martin, Joe Ingles of the Orlando Magic,
Yeah.
Katrina Bissett,
Oh, tick.
who we had on,
Yeah.
Steen,
Yeah, Raskopoulos,
We
yeah.
had on 360.
Had on.
we had on,
really?
yeah.
We suggested 360 in the
Yeah.
first meeting.
The next
Wow.
bit is my favourite slash I've ever seen in my entire life. Something/something.
Oh, yeah.
So the first one, Missy Higgins / Michael Phelps.
Because we can't have both. It would be ridiculous to have Missy Higgins and Michael Phelps and say, you can't have both. Choose one. That is a weird slashy.
I was just like, yeah. The next point, fruit.
Or you've just written fruit.
It just says
Can I
fruit.
see?
Yeah.
Fruit. Would that have been in your attempt to impress me by taking notes? Is that you just writing anything down? Shelts, can you hang on a sec? Just writing some notes down. Fruit.
That is insanely possible. That is just
Fruit. Okay. Good thing. Good to know.
amazing. Anyway,
Wow.
So there's
what
a-
a relic.
yeah.
All right. We should get that to the Smithsonian. I feel like that's a
What's the
piece-
Smithsonian?
It's a historic museum in
Oh,
America where they put very historical things.
Very
It's more of a
Bill of
joke and
Rights
doesn't
and-
really work
yeah.
when you ask what the Smithsonian is. It's less funny.
Well, should we get into the episode?
Let's
with
get
Pallavi?
Yeah, Pallavi.
In this episode, Pallavi talks about growing up in suburban Australia. She's in Taylor's Lakes, traversing multicultural Australia as an Australian Indian girl. She then talks about trying to make it in Bollywood in that incredibly complex, must be terrifying world of Bollywood. I mean, I think it's said in the app, but 1,000 people a day or more try to make it in Bollywood.
Yeah.
And India is a full-on place for anyone who's been there. It's an intense place to be.
Yeah.
So,
But also, as she talks about in the episode, and it's certainly not our place right now to talk about her story, but like her as a woman going into that environment, it sounds like it's very intimidating and often can be quite scary.
yeah. And then also that coming back to Australia and again having to navigate her role as an Indian Australian woman, but now as a superstar. So it's a really fascinating interview.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to hear how she talks about just a sense of belonging and struggling with finding a place to belong and I guess just finding acceptance really in all of the places that she lived and worked.
Yeah. She's so eloquent. It's a joy to listen to her speak. She's brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh, and I should also mention that Pallavi has a podcast coming out. It's an Audible original podcast called Sleep Sound, where Pallavi, with many other incredible people, but Pallavi in her case tells a story called The Tale of Princess Aubergine, where she takes us on a journey to India for a sort of sleeping beauty story. So, yeah.
Princess Eggplant.
Aubergine.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Princess Eggplant.
Yeah. But
Just flexing my knowledge on fruit names. Vegetable
Or
names.
vegetables.
Great synonym work, Hugh.
Yeah, and you can find that at audible.com.au.
Yep.
I fall in all you do.
I would say officially, and this is not to pick a fight with any of our former guests, but I would say maybe potentially my favourite pre-interview chat we've ever had.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, I agree.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I feel like it's extremely offensive to previous guests. Yeah. But for this moment, it feels great to say it.
Well, now my work is done. I'm just going to head out now.
We should have recorded it. What a shame. Well, I feel like our guest, who you know who it is because we've already talked about it in the intro, but as far as a bio, Hugh, it almost seems like it would be quicker to run through the things she hasn't done in the world. But it's like, of course you're an actress, you've done so much, but just reading about you, the amount you've achieved before you're an actress.
Yeah, can we talk about how
astonishing?
Can we talk
Yeah.
about how smart you are?
Oh, thank you.
We should talk
Appreciate
about that.
that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to send this to my parents and be like,
Like an intellectual powerhouse. But this is very much like my child version of how smart you are. But you skipped 2 grades in primary school.
skipped 1 grade in high school.
Okay.
Yeah. Just started early because my parents were like, childcare, what is that? Like, just put her in
Get her
now.
in.
No, Hugh was running through all the things you haven't done.
All right.
It'll take a while.
Unfortunately, no one will hear that joke, so I'm definitely editing that bit out.
Damn it. Hate it when that happens.
No, I'd read somewhere that you'd skip two year levels, but I mean, still skipping 1 year level.
Do you know,
is-
yeah, sorry to cut you off, but not good active listening on my part. Sorry, I was
No,
ready. Yeah, really
definitely cut me
bad.
off.
Sorry. Yeah.
Definitely cut me
Okay.
off.
Can we edit that out? But my parents, they call it a double promotion. That's
Oh, a double promotion in terms of what?
you
Skipping.
go from 8 to 10, so it's a double promotion, right? And so I think that's
course.
been slowly translated over time into my skip 2 year levels. These are the kind of faux pas, cultural faux pas that I have to deal with in my
Very
life, and then it comes up.
I love it.
So yeah, when it happened, all the aunties and the uncles at the cultural functions that we'd go to for all our cultural preservation every Saturday evening would be like, "You had a double promotion," and I had no idea what they were talking about. So anyway, so this is just for
a great term.
This is
Yeah.
yeah.
At school to get a double promotion. So what year level did you skip?
Year 9.
Year 9. So
Okay.
yeah, that is amazing.
Arguably an important year in,
Yeah.
Oh, really?
development.
Yeah, I think so.
I have regrets about that now.
How was that actually going? Because I imagine you have like a group of friends and then you sort of like leaving them.
I was a bit of a loner.
Oh,
I was
we're
just
working too hard.
Yeah, I was like, no, I actually, this is, I moved to India weirdly when I was 9.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Chennai to learn dance because I always had this fascination with my culture and where does it all come from? Why do I feel this way? And where do I belong? And, the classic migrant existential angst, particularly as part of the first generation that was a critical mass to grow up brown in Australia from a migrant background. I was in love with Bollywood as a kid and I loved to dance and I just wanted ways to connect. And so my parents were like, you want to go live in India? I was like, yeah. And they're like, okay. And I was like, I'm 9, but I'm glad that doesn't bother you one bit, And so I went to India as a 9-year-old, had my 10th birthday, came back, and it was like I went a 9-year-old, came back a 16-year-old because it was such a mind-boggling experience, that 3 months to 4 months of my life.
And that was by yourself?
Yes, there was an auntie there that,
Yeah.
I lived with and her daughter, but, it's not your parents. My parents were like, see ya. And within 2 weeks, I was like, I really want to come back. And my father was like, nope, the deal is you're going to go to school there and, follow the deal. We have discussions at the dinner table about this all the time now. I'm like, really? Would you do that to my friend's child? Would you send them off if they said, I want to go live in India today? They're like, sorry, we were just not.
Different time.
Different time.
Yeah.
They were like, well, when we were kids, you'd get shipped off to you. I'm like, when you were kids? This is just, anyway. I came back to Melbourne really, I think, quite precocious and a little bit unsettled. And so then I went from a public primary school to a private high school. And that was like this other culture shock that was going on. All of a sudden we were in kilts and blazers and reading the hymns and, reciting sonnets and all of this stuff, which was a culture shock for someone who grew up in an Indian family. And so I think my displacement was increased a little bit more than it might have otherwise been. And, I was kind of like just very disassociated in year 7 and 8. So my great plan was just do it quicker and just get it done with.
You consciously
I
did that.
asked to skip. So
Really?
Wow, you applied for the double promotion.
I presented the plan.
Because traditionally, I would say, like, you do hear about like parents who are very, want their kids to be really smart and want them to
Yeah.
achieve, and it's usually the parents pushing it. Rarely you hear it's the kids.
No, my parents were. They were pretty hands off. They had things to do. I mean, and I really empathise now with. Both my parents worked full time. My mum was a professor of engineering at RMIT, and to be again a South Asian woman at that time working in a predominantly white male engineering faculty, I'm sure had its challenges. And so she was, she had her work cut out for her. So we were just, my brother and I were kind of plodding along and just, doing our thing. And I think there is, it's incepted at birth when you're born in Australia in an Asian family that you have to kind of do well and do okay because there is some great sacrifice that's occurred, blah, blah, blah. And I come from and I always like to preface this, I think there are different kinds of migrant communities, as we all know, that's obvious, but, the waves of migration from South Asia has differed over the years. And my parents came from the skilled migrant cohort who were kind of invited by the government to come here in the 80s. And so their experience wasn't traumatic in that sense. They didn't come as refugees. They were given visas and homes to stay in and had to just work it out. But the government in Australia wanted these migrants. And so for them, their challenges were obviously the challenges of racism or the challenges of fitting in, but it wasn't, are we going to survive? It wasn't that deep fiscal survivalism. But yet that there is a struggle going on and everyone is trying to find their way and trying to fit in. And you hear the dinner time conversations that your parents are having about what their day was like, and you're very receptive to that. And so you kind of go, I need to take care of myself in these other ways, because I'm not going to come home. My parents are going to be like, how was your day today? That wasn't the conversation happening. That emotional support wasn't necessarily there. And it wasn't nefarious. It was just they had other things going on.
So did they talk to you in realistic terms about like the world and about racism, or were they sort of trying to sort of protect you?
Again, I think it was, in my case, my parents were very laissez-faire. Like the four of us were very strong individuals since I was a kid, and they treated us like adults really, and there was no real mollycoddling. I mean, I can't speak for my older brother, but particularly in my case, I don't think racism really came up. I remember taking it into my own hands, surprise, surprise, when I was 5 and this kid was calling me chocolate ice cream at school. And I went up to his mum and I was like, your son's calling me chocolate ice cream. I think you might have a problem at home.
Oh, you spoke to the mum?
I spoke to the mum and she was just knitting, being like, can you please leave me alone? And so I just had this weird awareness of, and it's not a great thing as a kid. You kind of want to go, I want to just be a kid. Yeah. But I think I was surrounded by adults. And,
it's an amazing like level of like almost objectivity.
Yeah.
At that
this
age.
Is bad.
Yeah.
This shouldn't be happening.
To not take it personally or be hurt by it.
Yes.
Oh, were you hurt by it?
I don't think I was hurt by it. I just became really aware that this happens. And this is something that's going to continuously happen. So, and at the end of the day, I did grow up in the northwestern suburbs of Melbourne, which was quite multicultural. So it was normalised and people did say things but it was, people from different multicultural backgrounds were having a go at each other half the time. But it's also that minority kind of complex where you start to pick on the weaker link, because you're like, if I can pick on that guy, then...
Or test out who is the weaker link.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the person that belongs to the host community might not be so harsh on me because I might be seen as an ally to them. So it's all this kind of complex stuff, which was mirrored in the adult lives of those who I sort of saw at home, and it's very kind of layered and all pervasive. And I guess you just grow to know that that's your norm, and so it wasn't really talked about. You go, this is just our lot. It's cool. Yeah. This is the baptism of fire that we're going through.
So when you say to your parents, was there a conversation where you said to your parents, I think I'd like to be a Bollywood star? Like, did that happen at a certain stage, and did they go, yep, well, go and do it?
No, that was the one which shockingly they were like, no.
Because by that stage, had you already graduated as with a law degree and
arts law in like world record time, Guinness Book of Records?
It was world record time. It was silly. It was a joke at uni. People would be like, Pallavi, how many subjects are you doing these semesters at 9? And I was like, all right, calm down, guys.
Yeah, it's 11.
Don't insult me.
Because let's not brush over that. You did an arts law degree in 4.5 years, as opposed to it's meant to be
6. Well, I did a diploma in French as well, just so you missed that.
Oh,
Hugh,
my research is right off.
This is so bad. This is like every Indian person watching this is just gonna be like, oh, why is she just making us out to be these massive nerds? Anyway.
Well, I think it's incredibly impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, that's what I want to talk about, how smart you are.
No, I was in Bollywood telling people I was really smart. They were like, no, we don't care. I just dance around the tree.
Dance around the tree. I have an arts law degree.
Yeah, you should have. The biggest failure was Melbourne Uni, law, arts, it, again, gives you a real sense that you're something. Maybe a little bit too much. Yeah. Because I did rock up to Bombay and I was like, guys, here's my cover letter. Yeah. And they were like, cover letter? Like, what is this nonsense? Just tore it up. One guy was like, please never present something like this again.
Really?
Wow. Because I didn't know how to first of all, how the hell do you break into Bollywood?
Yeah,
I grew up in Taylor's Lakes. Like, where do you go?
Yep.
So to go back to your point about whether my parents were okay with it, this is where it kind of sort of their conservatism might have snuck in. I also come from a pretty. It's hard. It's really hard to talk about this stuff in black and white terms. I can't say my parents were conservative or they weren't. They were very liberal. I was obviously able to like do what I wanted to within reason, but there was a framework that I was operating within. Like compared to Sharon, my friend at school. I don't know why I use Sharon. I'm so nervous
Paints a
to.
picture.
Yeah.
There was no Sharon.
Yeah, there was no Sharon.
There was an Australian.
It was an Australian girl
Yeah.
who was able to be like, oh, I'm going to the movies at 8:30 on a Friday night with these people I just met. Like my mum was not letting me go to Crown to watch a movie at 8:30 on a Friday night. And also keeping in mind I'd skipped a year. So now I'm like almost 2 years younger than everyone on my year level. So socially, everyone's doing more stuff and I'm trying to figure out how I kind of fit in there. So there was a limitation to my freedom within that. It wasn't socially like go do what you want. You were always scared you'd get busted holding a boy's hand or something by some auntie peeking out of a tree in like some shopping centre. I mean, these things happen because sexuality was not something that you could talk about with your parents. Having friends that were boys was scary to them. But there were things that were still imported from the world that they left about the role of a girl and how you want to be perceived by your community. So I'm not saying that I grew up in a household where that was totally eradicated. My dad was very much didn't care about that stuff. My mum grew up in a pretty conservative Indian family, so she had still inherited some of those things.
There's a strictness.
Yeah, there was, and she wasn't outwardly strict, but she cared because her mum was pretty conservative. So, it's passed down. But yeah, the Bollywood thing was unsurprising to them because I'd said I wanted to be a Bollywood actress, I think when I was 3 years old. But I think they assumed I'd grow out of it. And then they were very scared that I would get about how I would be perceived because Bollywood is traditionally in India was quite a scary thing. It was where the loose woman goes to hang out. There was all of this stigma attached to what it was to be a performer.
So they were worried about how you'd be perceived by who?
More than perceived, how I might be treated,
Okay.
what might happen to me. But it's since transpired that my father actually wanted to be an actor in when he was at uni and himself didn't feel empowered to go through that pathway. And he's a, upper class Hindu male who grew up in Delhi in an English speaking home. I'm always like, Dad, you are the privileged white man of India. But if that was his fear, then I can only imagine what it would be, the thought of what it might be for me. So I had to kind of lie to go back.
Right.
I was going to ask, but you've sort of answered it, I think. The double, was there a double standard in, like you were saying, it's where, in inverted commas, loose women, but not loose men? Like, is there a double standard?
Oh, totally. There always is, you know. And I think, again, it's really hard to talk about India, women, repression, sexual violence, all of these things. About when it comes to women's empowerment, particularly from the subcontinent, because it's so easy to paint this sort of broad strokes picture of India's unsafe for women and da-da-da-da, and you hear all horror stories of tourists going there and having a tough time as women. But because I understand the culture, and I don't justify any of those things, but because I understand the culture so intimately and I understand how layered and complex it is, it's just really important for me to preface that it's not like, okay, it's a terrible place for women necessarily all the time. But yes, it is definitely harder. And I ultimately, and I'm skipping ahead a lot here, but I did ultimately make a choice about whether I wanted to be a woman in India or a brown woman in the world, and which was the tougher of the two.
Gosh.
And which would be a better life for me in terms of living in alignment with my values and just ease, really. So, I actually feigned an exchange program in Delhi, which is how I went to India, because my parents are professors. You just go, I'm going to go study. And they're like, of course.
Right, have fun. Talk to you in a couple of years.
Did you?
I'll be back in 6 months.
Yeah, literally, it was a 6 months exchange. It was signed off by Melbourne Uni. Sorry, Melbourne Uni, but yeah.
Melbourne Uni went along with it.
Oh, so it was a real course.
It was
You
a
had it
real.
all-
I
okay.
wanted to get to India. I was really feeling it in my bones. I was still a performing artist, so I grew up as a classical Indian dancer. Every Saturday, I was performing on Melbourne stages, and it was how I was known in the community, and it was who I was, and I just didn't know how to make that mean something in Australia. Apart from just being the diversity. I mean, we didn't even use the word diversity then, not that I love using it now, but it was just multicultural representation on a very small scale.
So even though your parents were clearly not wanting you to be a Bollywood actress, they were okay with you dancing, were you acting as well throughout this time or just performing on stage?
It was mainly dancing,
Okay,
and
and that was fine.
that was how we propagated and preserved our culture, was through the arts. And I think one of, some of the things I've distilled in the last few years is, for me, my culture was accessible to me through the arts. That was what brought me close to the language, the music, the dance. And so
That's what drew you to it.
Absolutely. And so that's what I married with belonging in that culture. And potentially why I thought that was an appropriate pathway to discover that part of myself. And I've written about this in a book that's much publicised and very unpublished. But the distinction between entertainment and artistry. And, artistry, there's respect there. And particularly classical Indian dance it's an homage to the gods. It's mythological. You're telling stories that are in all of our spiritual texts. And whereas going to dance in Bollywood or perform in Bollywood, there was a real, a cheapness associated with that. And it's to the point where even if I was performing in Australia, if I was invited to dance at, what we might call like a cabaret, in the sense that there's food and drink being served when I'm dancing, that was a no. Because that's just entertainment while someone's having their dinner. Whereas if someone's coming to watch you at a theatre or in an auditorium, then that's giving respect to your art.
Gotcha.
So there were all these little distinctions. And, I was pretty young. I was just like, I just want to perform and this is what I love doing. And that's where I can do it, because I don't want to be just dancing for Diwali at Government House. No offence to Government House, but I'm just saying, that was going to be my path, was multicultural girl.
You wanted to be an artist more than an entertainer.
Yeah, I wanted to embody every part of that. And I'm very Indian. I speak fluent Hindi and I converse in Hindi as if I'm a native speaker. And I wanted to explore that as well, because there's something about language that you can only express a part of yourself if you're limiting your language, I think. There's this whole world I step into in Taylor's Lakes when my family's there, where I might as well be in Delhi, the way we're speaking and conversing. And I was like, I want to explore this more. This is great.
What does that feel like when you go home and you're in that world and you're speaking Hindi? And
yeah, it's so freeing. It's so great. I miss it when it's not happening. And I feel great about how our community is growing here now, especially, when I meet newer migrants and they don't expect someone like me to have fluent Hindi or Punjabi and just, riff and tell jokes and be crass and all of those things. It's just a different way of expressing and being human. And I think my Australian tropes or, the garb that we don as these Western beings, it's limiting for me. It doesn't express who I am completely in any environment. So I love being able to do that, and I can't wait for the time, and it will come, where there's a shorthand for everyone, just the way the world's going. But right now we're not there, and it was very much you cross the threshold into your family home. And I used to pick up the phone in primary school with an Indian accent. Because I speak to my parents in an Indian accent. I have since I was a kid. Okay, I speak to my brother.
In English or in
English?
Hindi?
In English,
Wow.
yeah. I speak to my brother in an Indian accent. We both grew up in Australia. He was 3 months old when he came to Perth. Like, there's no reason for it.
So has that just always been the way?
No, it was actually, I think, when we came to Melbourne, weirdly, because the community here was a lot larger. And so we kind of started to emulate these new kids that we were meeting who code switched. And we became master code switchers as well.
Yeah.
And we
When
were
you say
just-
code switches, what do you mean? Like switching between
2 codes of conduct or 2 codes of being. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
It's sort of it's what a lot of people from dual heritage use as a term to describe, like, because it's not just language and it's not just voice, it's your
embodiment.
My body language, how I will stand or sit if there were a bunch of aunties in the room, or how my behaviour changes completely.
I was just at a cafe the other day with a very good friend of mine who's gay, and the waiter came over. I know the waiter really well, chatted to him for years, and he came over and took my friend's order, and all of a sudden it was just very camp. And I went, oh, I didn't. And I said to my friend, I didn't know that. Oh, okay, and he said, yeah, he code switches.
Yeah.
Well, what's that? And he said, we're switching codes when he talks to you.
Oh, really?
And I went, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. And he goes, what are you talking about?
You idiot.
Yeah. How do you not know it's a thing? Yeah.
I didn't
and then
know.
he came back to me later and he was like, right, mate, what do you want? What are you after today?
Oh,
Just was very
wow.
like, wow, that's a code switch.
Yeah. It's
So there you go.
again another kind of survivalism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's the drive there? Is it to fit in, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, I was so young. I assume there's so much of it is
Yeah.
fitting in, right? So much of it is wanting to belong. And I think there's also a feeling of respect. My parents had these Indian accents, and I think beyond a point, when you're old enough that you can start learning new languages, or be a bit conscious about this stuff, you go. It probably felt weird to have a really deep Ochre accent talking to my mum at some point. She's like, "You want to come for dinner?" And I'm like, "Yeah, can I have some?" Like it would just.
Yeah.
Like you just
What food
you
were
want
you
to
about
turn
to
it
order
down.
then
I
in
know.
Australia?
I just stopped because I was
Rissoles and barbecue shapes.
because some cheese twisties. So curly whirly. That's what just the best thing about coming back to Australia is the fridge at a milk bar.
Oh, yeah.
That's what makes me the happiest. I often take I have a lot of photos in my favourites of fridges at milk bars.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
it's a
nice.
sign of my childhood.
What a smell that is, going into a milk bar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's very familiar. It's like a freezer smell, kind of a meaty smell. There's, someone's got some fizzos.
Mix of everything.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's code switching.
Were you? Was there ever a conversation? I'm interested to know about marriage. Were you? Was it discussed arranged marriage for you, or was always?
Honestly, you remember when I was saying my parents were really hands off?
Yep.
They're poor things. They're so sweet. Because I did confront them. I was home during 2020, like lockdown in Melbourne, and was sitting in the backyard, and I was like, so. As far as Indian parents go, really just 0 effort, guys, like not even one. And they were just really shocked. And I was like, your network sucks, or something's going on, And my dad's like, but we're scared of you.
Wow. I've never heard that.
And I'm like, I do your dishes. I'm like the model migrant daughter. Like, what else do you want? I became a Bollywood actor. Like, how many kudos do you get every Saturday? And
So
like,
what do you think they meant by that?
I think they're probably just scared that I'd be like, nah, like, or tell them off for bringing me not great candidates or something.
I've spent a lot of time in this interview trying to imagine what your dad looks like. I'm just
I'll show you a
fascinated.
photo. He's got an Akubra hat on most of the time. It's great. Yeah, he loves his Akubra. Drives his own Akubra.
Does he have glorious hair?
Great hair.
Yeah.
Great
That's
hair.
what I was picturing.
He combs it at every red light.
Amazing.
Gee, I've never heard someone be so vain for traffic cameras. Wow.
Sorry, Dad.
Well, I feel like we sort of stopped the story
Sorry,
when
yeah.
you get to Bollywood. It's like, oh, what happened?
Yeah.
So it's like you get to
Can
India.
I ask a question
Oh, yeah.
before this? Because
Yeah.
I think chronologically it'll line in.
Yeah, no, I'm not excited to get to Bollywood at all.
Had you tried to... Was the dream to be an actress performer anywhere, or was it Bollywood? And had you tried to in Australia at this point?
Ooh, such good questions. It was Bollywood, if I'm honest. As a kid, it was Bollywood because that was the only thing that would have made sense. I mean, where else was I going to go?
Yeah.
Like, that was just knowledge I had. But I didn't realise how much knowledge I had until I tried to be a performing artist here. So I studied law and media and communications, and, what's the next best thing to being a Bollywood actress? A broadcast journalist. You're like, oh, I get to communicate and storytell in some way, and it's respectable. My parents are not going to be shamed, and all of the things that could happen.
Yeah. There are job positions available.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like there's a pathway. But I was told that I could never dye my hair blonde, so it's not gonna work out. So don't even send your show, really.
You were literally told that.
Literally told that by a teacher of broadcast journalism.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. And you did you believe them?
Yeah, I was like, oh, that makes sense. It was just like, that makes sense. Okay. So, and then I actually initially went to India thinking I'd try and get a job as a journalist in India. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, one second, if I'm coming all this way, let's just go back to the OG dream.
And how many people turn up every day to Mumbai?
1,000.
So it's 1,000, yeah, right.
1,000 a day turn up to be an actor every day. That's the statistic.
Actually 1,000.
Actually 1,000. Probably more.
With the dream, like I guess it's like the LA thing in America, but like I guess it's the same thing, probably bigger. Yeah. Way bigger.
Yeah, and I went over there and, this is where the naivety kind of probably didn't help me. And it's great because it got me there. But I just sort of thought that I could work it out, and it was a lot harder to work out than I expected. And I think, I think I'm grateful for the values that I grew up with as an Indian woman and an Australian woman, but they didn't always compute in the industry that I was working in. And so that was the next hurdle, was like, now I'm here. I've got my bags in a 200 rupee room in Colaba.
Can you explain what that is? Sorry.
So Calaba's this part of. Go on, Hugh.
Oh, Hugh.
Yeah, go on, Hugh.
This is sensational.
Sorry, I just like to defer to Hugh on explaining the geography of Bombay.
I actually want to do a follow-up question, Hugh. Can you tell me the difficulties of being a woman in Bollywood trying to get work? That would be great if you can follow up with that as well. Thanks.
Can I tell the audience a little bit about your background and just legitimise this? You and Josh are half South Asian, so you can answer this question.
I spent the best part of a year in India and Mumbai for a lot of that time, which is why
and he's actually going to do it.
No, he's not. Which is why I was so excited to know what Colaba was and want to say it. But then as I went Colaba, I went, no, Hugh, this is not for you.
You got halfway through the word, though. Yeah. It came out.
Yeah, I avoided Kala.
So, but I actually would like, okay, how about you do your version, then I'll do my version, because I think the two perspectives are really interesting for this.
Okay. Well, okay. So Colaba would
pressure.
be, it would be like in Melbourne, if someone's coming to Melbourne, you'd go to Federation Square, I feel like as a tourist. That's to me, that's what Colaba was. Right. It was like tourist wall to wall. It was professional beggars. It was it was the most touristy Indian experience I probably had while I was there. Yeah. I would say.
No, everyone.
How'd he go?
Really? Well, no, but that's so great. I
don't know why I want him to fail.
That is so great because
and Shantaram is very much like Shantaram experience.
Yes, he said it. Shantaram experience, which for the listeners is Gregory Davis.
I can't remember his name, but I read it at that bar in
Leopold's.
Yeah, I read it at Leopold's in Colaba, and I read the whole book pretty much there.
How did you feel?
I loved it.
Sorry, I'm just auditioning for like when one of you guys is sick. Like I'm just.
This is good.
I loved it. I'd been pretty miserable in India for the first 2 months.
Right.
I didn't. It was too much of a culture shock.
Yeah.
And then I started to feel, it was around the time I was starting to feel like, not that I ever understood India, and I'm still so confused by India as a country and the culture, but it was at that point I was starting to feel at least comfortable walking around in Mumbai by myself or with my ex-partner, and it coincided with the time I was reading Shantaram at Leopold's, and I just felt like the memory to me is like I was starting to feel comfortable in India. So I love that. It's a very fond memory.
Oh, wow. It's so, like, again, for me, going back is similar but different, obviously, because I'm an Australian the way you are, but also I present as an Indian woman, right? And so it's so interesting because I seldom get to experience that outwardly because it doesn't compute for people. They're like, but you're Indian. But I'm like, but I'm also observing this as an Australian. And sometimes I just want to observe it that way. And I don't want to understand the subtext, and I don't want to understand the languages that are flying around, and that person's having a fight with their grandma in the other table. And So sometimes I get envious of those moments that people talk about in their experiences with India.
I mean, I look back at a white man, an Australian man who was reading Shantram and Leopold's must be like, I don't know.
Peak envy for me.
I just like, you couldn't get a more, like, I mean, the biggest cliche possible. Like,
But it's also interesting because one of the things a lot of people don't realise is the immense privilege of having white skin in India.
It was.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I mean, I did a TV ad over there and I wasn't going to bring this up because it's like shameful looking back on it. I didn't quite
salt
get it.
in my wounds. I'm like lighting up in the backlots of Bollywood. You're just like, oh, I'm just going to read Shadza over Leopold's cast like that.
No, it was one of those experiences where you can, it's a tourist thing. You can go and just be in a Bollywood ad. I don't know if they're real or not, but what they got me to do was just ridiculous. Like, and I wasn't going to say it, but it was like, it was a moisturising cream.
A whiteness cream.
And it was like I was the after person. So,
What?
yeah.
I don't know about this.
Surely I've told you.
You've never told me this.
Fairness cream. If you don't know about fairness
No,
creams?
I know about fairness
okay.
creams. I didn't know you were in an ad.
I just had to like rub it on my face.
So did a brown person turn into you based on this cream?
I don't.
You never saw the edit?
Potentially.
Yeah.
Well, there was an Indian man next to me, and he was like looking all frustrated. And
Oh, my God. We've got to track this
I love
down.
that you're explaining this for the audience and I don't have to. This is making me feel really good.
That's
Like,
great.
no, he was just frustrated that his moisturising cream just wasn't
it's good.
doing as what he wanted it to. And then I put my moisturising cream on. Everyone cheered for me.
Did you start with brown makeup on? Were they brown faced you?
No,
You're okay.
like,
So maybe we found the thing that will bring the Resilience Project down. Knew it would happen one day.
Did not expect this to be it.
but the reason I laughed so much before, like the tree thing, dancing around a tree, was
Yeah.
the whole thing was set around a tree.
Yeah, okay.
But I didn't get that what they're doing is a before and after. I just was like,
Yeah.
this poor guy's moisturising cream is shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the most visceral memories of Mumbai.
Yes.
They've been the most unhappy and uncomfortable and scared, and then joyously, it just felt amazing when I embraced what India really was.
You surrender to it.
Sorry, I shouldn't. Josh has spent so much more time.
Oh,
I shouldn't
Josh,
be-
okay, I want to hear about
Well,
did
not
you-
in India, but I lived in Bangladesh for a year.
Oh, wow.
With my wife when we were a lot younger.
Okay.
And yeah, I loved it so much. Lived in Dhaka, but it was so challenging. And the longer I was there, the harder I found it because I was like, I feel more uncomfortable about it the older I get because I was like, the thing you're talking about, the white privilege of being a white male, and the way I was able to just kind of float through this incredible place that had so much life and brilliant people, but also so much heartbreak and tragedy and poverty. And the way I was able to sort of float through it, kind of untouched
almost revered.
and
Having done
celebrated
nothing.
for just
Yeah.
walking and just talking to someone. And even the levels of privilege between being a white male as opposed to a white female and the different experience I had there compared to my wife. It's at the time, and I always have this incredible guilt about it because I found it it's so confronting to live there. And then therefore I was like, well, I lent into the comfort of the ease that came with being white. But then I feel guilt over that, of the preferential treatment you get the older I live, because I'm like, I felt like I also needed it to survive in a weird, does that make sense?
Well, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it as someone who was an expat in Mumbai, and I think I lived multiple lives based on the levels of privilege that I had.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I was from Australia. I have an Australian passport. Like if something was going to happen to me, I had a consulate that I could contact. That's a huge level of privilege that I was always aware of. And that kind of kept me maybe being able to walk in the face of danger towards it quite often.
Yeah.
But it was, I guess, and because I was so hyper conscious, I had a lot of friends who were white, expats in Mumbai and, coming over to do a JV with a bank or this or that. And I found too much comfort, I think, in having dinners with those people.
Yeah.
Because I was able to then escape the grime and the grit and the sheer lack of any of those trappings that I went through during the day, because I, rightly or wrongly, stripped my privilege when I went to India in terms of what I did in the local sphere. I didn't wear my Australianness on my sleeve. I didn't keep my Australian accent. I didn't say, well, I mean, I told everyone, I was like, I'm from Melbourne Uni Law School, like make me an actor in an Indian accent. But that was just, I was even more of an alien then, because it was like their impression of a woman who's from abroad, or an NRI, a non-resident Indian, or as I was constantly told, a not required Indian. You're like, you're an NRA, not required Indian. I had to say, well, no, I'm as local as it gets, because I thought that was my way to acceptance, or my way to convincing them that I can portray characters that reflect this country. And honestly, if I had have gone, hey, I'm Australian, I have money, all of these things, then maybe my inroads would have been different. But I didn't respect that as a process. And I think that's my Australian upbringing, where you go, no, I'm not going to just use power right now. Like, you believe in this mythology of mateship and egalitarianism and, you know, equality and equity. And again, doing a law degree probably didn't help, because those a priori truths and that feeling of, you know, the truth will prevail, that's not how the world works. And particularly in a screen business that had operated in such a skewed way for so long, until I would say, you know, there's been this reckoning in the whole world in the last 5 or 6 years around inequities between gender and race. And we didn't have language like this 5 years ago. We weren't talking about, I wasn't certainly talking so openly about my struggles 5 years ago, because there was no space for it. You're expected to go, hey, what a great life you got, because your parents migrated to Australia.
Yeah.
And so it's so complex, and I was really trying. There was always a tightrope to be walked, where you don't want to come across as this arrogant, obnoxious foreigner. You don't want to come across as a foreigner because that's othering, but you also don't want to be open to exploitation. And unfortunately, if you don't come from privilege, if you don't have connections, if you don't wear certain things on your sleeve, then you're almost fair game, because it's a misogynistic place. It can be. And wait, you don't want to do that either. Like, you're not going to come and have an audition in a hotel room. Well, then you're too difficult. You know, then you've got a mind of your own. Then you're like this whole other monster. So that was kind of
Sorry, what do you mean by that? Like, come to a hotel room for an audition?
I mean, so when I first got to India, it was pretty explicit that if you didn't know anyone, or if someone wasn't going to back you or like help you get in or give you the right audition, that the way that women who were not from the industry got into the industry was by aligning themselves with a powerful man through either sexual favours or something else. I don't know. The casting couch was real. It was a part of the lexicon of how it operated, and it wasn't that cloaked either, you know. And I think because of the fact that I came armed with that information, and maybe it wasn't as bad as I was, maybe my fear was talking, you know, maybe I was like, that's the worst thing that could happen, and I do not want to be in that situation, what come may. So I'm going to keep myself so far away from power structures that are exploitative. And so what ended up happening was I actually only knew a small amount of people, got to know a small amount of people intimately as friends or as colleagues, because that fear had marred my early journey and had created all these shields on how I needed to protect myself. And in a way, I think that's maybe a disservice I did myself, because I was more corporate in my approach. I was more girl from Melbourne Uni than I was freewheeling artist who wants to have fun and be embodied as a person and an artist. And now, again, in hindsight, I can like reconcile the yin and the yang of that and say, oh, it makes sense why you used one over the other, but I just didn't know what I was doing. There was no pathway. I just turned up, my bag, went to Colaba. And my father had said to me, when I think he realised I was going to India, and, you know, he's like, oh, this girl, she's probably going to try something, you know, in the Indian industry. He said, make sure you turn up in an air-conditioned car with a driver to every meeting. And I was like, what? You drive a 95 Camry. like, what? I didn't understand. And what he was in a coded way trying to explain is the hierarchy of privilege and the way that you're treated. And I was like, I'm Australian and I'm a student. Like, I don't need to do any of that. But he was right in a sense, because I would catch the local train, I would take the rickshaws and turn up in a sweaty heap. And therefore, I was the same as any girl who came from a small village in the mountains of, northern India who wanted to be an actress in Bombay. I didn't, you could call it queue jumping, but I didn't walk into a room that I could have walked into. I walked into a room where I would never be seen, because that's just where this mass was herded. And, it is sort of, there are various lanes. There's the fast track lane, there's the middle lane, there's the slow lane. And it's not that people that have to turn up in the slow lane don't get through. They do, but their slog is different. And I kind of chose the slow lane.
I imagine that's a tricky thing to figure out, because you're really choosing between wanting to be treated equally,
yes,
and wanting to do it like quote unquote the right way, but then also safety.
Yeah.
And and looking after yourself and protecting yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a tough decision.
I led many lives in Bombay. And, there was the privileged life that where you could walk into a nice coffee shop and pay for was a $3 coffee then, which was a lot of money for somebody. But you're earning in rupees. My first paycheck for a play, I think, was 400 rupees, which is $8 for opening night. My taxi, though, because I chose an air-conditioned taxi that day, was $20. And the dream was very it wasn't even let me be a lead actress in Bollywood. Sure, that's your kind of subconscious goal. But it was like, can I be an actor? Like, can I
make a living?
Yeah.
Can you be like me?
Yeah.
You're thinking. And I get
Hugh,
that.
I just want that cream ad. And it was sort of like everything was a clue to legitimacy in a sense. Like, where do I get to actually do the thing that I said that was promised to me as a kid who grew up in Australia, where they say you can be what you want to be when you grow up. And you go, no, actually I can't be what I want to be when I grow up, because you've just told me in the real world that I can't. So where can I go for that to happen and that to actualize? So it was really an actualization that I was seeking. And but the goalposts keep shifting, because the industry is ever changing, and there were so many voices, because the power dynamic is very skewed. You've hundreds of thousands of people wanting to be an actor, and like a fistful of people who have power to determine who gets to do that. So I'd walk into a new room every day and be told that something different was lacking, or there was a different goalpost I needed to kick. I used to get told, ironically, I was too brown, because I was a darker skinned Indian woman, and fair skin was preferred. And it's not like I didn't know that. I grew up Indian in Australia. Like, I was called various things for the colour of my skin. And I'm, to some people, a fair-skinned Indian person, because I'm North Indian. So even that whole thing is complex. And I was like, oh, wait, so I was too brown in Australia, I'm too brown in India. Like, what's happening here? And that was a time where they were also casting a lot of women who were Indian passing, but they were South American or European.
And is that controversial in India?
No, it wasn't at all controversial.
Right, okay.
I was like, this should be controversial.
Yeah.
People were like, what do you mean? She's fair.
Okay.
They were like, the fact that you think it's controversial is controversial.
Yeah.
Like, so I was, again, you're 20 years old and you're going, what how is this? Like, nothing was computing. And I think gradually I just fell back on the work. You go, how do I get to as many auditions as possible? It was literally a numbers game, going, do as many as possible, work as hard as you can, and you will maybe get noticed or get that next leg up. And I have to say, while it was a real convoluted journey, those things did happen. I'm very lucky that I did meet a director at a screening so I was sort of struggling a little bit for a few years. And again, this is a whole other topic, but the word struggler is thrown around a lot in India in the arts industry, and I used to find it really abrasive. And they'd be like, so you're a struggler. And they'd just call you a struggler.
If you're not like getting work and things.
Or even if you are, but if you're not like, top shelf.
If you're not striving.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, no, I'm good. Like I'm fine. I'm
Yeah.
not struggling. Like we're fine.
A double promotion once.
Yeah. Exactly.
Serious? Struggling?
I know. And I was like, please refer to cover letter, like page 4. And so I was in that phase where people just thought it was okay to say things like that to you because you were an aspirant, which is probably a better word. And I'd started doing bit roles in films and lots of plays, and I guess I developed a reputation as a reliable actor. And I had been told, you'll never work as a lead in this film industry. It's just not going to happen. You don't have the family backing, the pedigree, the looks, the this, the that, blah, blah, blah. And I think I'd gotten to a point where I was cool with like, oh, I'm a working actor. And that's respectable and there's dignity in that. But just when I had accepted that, I heard about this movie being cast for, and it was this big guy, it's not physically a big guy, but like a big star. Famous star. And the director had happened to be at the screening of my last film that I was in. And so when I approached him saying, can I audition for you, he actually responded positively, which was statistically kind of strange that happened. Or maybe not once you hit that kind of nucleus. Maybe people are in those rooms, but it hadn't been my experience because I was in the periphery for so long. And then I just did a series of auditions for this guy, and it was quite unbelievable that he cast me as the lead in this film. But it was
Which film was this?
It's Besharam.
Okay.
It was my first big Bollywood film. And then I continued to work. I actually started my next big film right after that. And then I took a break from Bollywood. The truth is that those 2 big films that I did over 3 years, they took these 2 films.
To film them?
From being cast in the first one to the release of the second one, it was almost 3 years.
Yeah.
And that really did burn me out in, again, a part of my time. Like I'd had a struggle and then I do these 2 big films and I just needed to kind of recalibrate what I was doing, who I wanted to be as a person, because now I'm in the nucleus of this power structure and I need to figure out whether I'm buying into it or not and whether I'm comfortable being in those rooms where I'm rubbing shoulders with certain people that maybe were not nice to me a few years earlier. Maybe I know they're not nice to people today.
So from that point of view, did the Me Too movement impact India?
It did. It hit India.
Yeah.
I was at that stage had decided that I would probably not work in India much longer.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, for all the reasons that Me Too had to happen.
Okay, yeah.
And I think, I really felt like there was a gradual curbing of my agency as a human and a voice. So all of going back to our original conversation about me asking for things and having that confidence, like that had been decimated, by the time I was in my early 20s, because all of a sudden nothing happened like that. All the things you believe, all of your gumption, your principles are actually leading to your implosion or destruction or, a lack of you being able to succeed. And all of the things that I was told at primary school, high school or uni are positives were actually now negatives in my life.
Yeah. And they'd worked as positives because you achieved so much.
Yeah. So I was like, wait, I have to decondition everything. And you have to relearn the codes of being back in Australia. But yeah, I mean, I can't remember what your question was.
It's just about the Me Too movement. Really.
Of course, that old thing. So, I mean, I guess the point about Bombay and Bollywood also to note is that it was the early part of my career that I worked in India, and then I made a choice that it might be a safer place to be a brown woman in the world. Very hopeful that this push for diversity was real. And so I started working in the UK, a little bit in Australia and the US, which, now I actually feel quite sad about sometimes. I miss dancing on big sets and I miss being in that world, but it was such an unsupported experience for me, even though it was highly celebrated publicly and Australia loved to go, our girl became a Bollywood actor. There was no institutional support for me as an individual artist going over there in a way that was safe for an Australian girl to go over there.
When you use that, you've used the word safe a couple of times. Can you define that a bit more for me? Because I've got an idea of what I think it might be, but I think
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what you just
Well, do you want me to?
say.
Do you want me to?
Just defer to my
what
South
she's
Asian
saying.
brother here. I was like, you can say anything. I think it's so many things, you know. I think it's, you know, which is poignant for what you guys talk about. Mental health is a big part of it. Physical well-being and the boundaries of my body were a big part of it. And literally just, you know, being a woman in India, being an actress in India and the connotations that come with that. And I think, yeah, I guess the safety of someone with two heritages kind of trying to reconcile that is a really arduous task. And I just grew up with the belief that in order to be accepted in Australia, I had to be exceptional. I think that's underlying. You know, that's an underlying belief that a lot of kids that grow up
Yep.
other in this community have. And I have to say I did not have parents that wanted me to bring straight A's, that cared about my double promotion or anything. My parents, they did not even know what grade I was in. Well, it did get confusing. It got confusing, granted, but even before that, they were like, is it 4 or 5? Or they were really hands off. I said to my dad, I was like, I don't want to be one of those kids that's up studying all night to get, you know, the top mark. I'd rather do, you know, paint. And he was like, cool, do what you want. So I didn't have that familial pressure. But yet societally I knew that if I was to be one day invited into a room like this even, all of these other things would have to come before it, you know, because your access points would be marred by the fact that you grew up either on the wrong side of the tracks or you come from a different culture, you look a different way. And I didn't walk around thinking I'm a brown woman, but you do inherently know that there's something that you're fighting just by stepping out of the house.
Do you feel like you belong? And if so, where?
On a plane.
Okay.
And it's so interesting because I'm now channeling a lot of these questions into work because I'm like, I can't do it any other way. And I've put my own work on hold for so long just because a lot of what I thought would give me belonging or create belonging for others that felt like me was being seen on screen as a brown woman or being, you know, a person on a panel. Love being a person on a panel. And so, you know, I've spent a lot of time putting my energy in those places. But I have found that that's not a solution to the internal feeling of that oneness and that home. And it is an internal thing, right? We all have to get there internally. I don't think there's anything that I can say that if Australia was a certain way or my parents did something, it would have changed it. But belonging also comes from community and being able to be open-hearted, right? And that's what we're doing right now. We're having this open-hearted discussion.
Yeah.
And so I feel belonging right now in this room. But I might go somewhere to a restaurant where I might be triggered into feeling how I felt as a kid when my mum ordered with a weird grammatical error, and it will take me back to that place of unbelonging. So it is about mastering that emotional roller coaster because I think that trauma is real. And when that triggers, I do sometimes go into those spaces of unbelonging internally.
Yeah.
And it happens quite a lot because I work in the culture industry, which isn't yet geared towards safety of people with different backgrounds.
Yeah.
So I'm often experiencing those emotions internally that the rest of the world might not realise are ongoing.
It's got to be challenging to negotiate that in your work and then do the work. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Can I just play that for people? Like my next panel will be like, just got to do a statement by Josh here. It is. And I think sometimes I get sad because I'm like, I just wanted to be an actress. I just wanted to dance. And I'm doing very little of that most of the time. But I think of my colleagues in the UK and the US, and this film wedding season on Netflix. Everyone can watch that. It's only 90 minutes long. Won't take very long. Just get on it. I don't know.
It's like about 90 minutes.
I do that to everyone. Like, it's only 90 minutes. Just watch it. No, but the Riz, who played my dad, we were talking on set, and he was Ray in Schitt's Creek, if anyone's seen Schitt's Creek.
Yeah.
So he's great, you know, and he's a generation above me in terms of his work as a brown actor in the States. And just hearing him talk about playing a taxi driver for 20 years, you know, and you go, shit, well, these guys have already done that there. So I have to do some heavy lifting right now, and that's okay. You know, we're all, it is a bit of a chicken shit sandwich that you have to eat. You go, I would have liked to have been a 19-year-old ingenue who got to just be like, I want to be an actress and here's a role. But that's not what my journey was. And I guess first principles of Vedic philosophy also help when I remember to remember them, which is the concept of dharma, or dharma, as we like to say. And that is that there is a duty to partake in the work. You know, there's work we have to undertake in life, and that is a part of being human and how we live a good life. And, you know, it's different for everyone. This is just the shape it's taking, I guess.
I think there's a bit of a question that needs to be asked, because we've talked about so much of what you've gone through, and then now working as an actress back in Australia. And earlier you mentioned being told by your lecturer at uni that basically you don't look right for Australian TV. Subtext being.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that now? Because at the time you were like, it seemed to, whether this is true, the way you told it, you seemed to accept it with just logically, yep, okay.
Yeah.
Now what do I do to make it somewhere else?
Yeah. It's a good question, because I've been thinking about it a lot, obviously, now that I'm in Australia again at this time, and spearheading the conversations in many rooms about how we get this right now. It's such a complex issue, because there's sort of corrective behaviour going on, which is so important. And I think it's easy to say we don't have diversity, we need diversity. Okay, yes, these are two true facts. How do you do that, though, is a lot more complex. And the box ticking, the kind of tokenism, all of this, these are things that are going to happen. And I've accepted that, because we're going from a context where no one has literally ever thought about this as a problem to all of a sudden this is a problem, a massive problem, and we need a solution really quick, smart. Otherwise, we're going to lose an audience that's important to us, because fundamentally economics drives a lot of these changes. That's maybe a bit pessimistic to look at it that way.
I think quite realistic.
Or realistic.
Yeah. And I know this because until streaming came along, no one really cared about what was happening in India until, you know, you can go, oh, wait, but there's an audience there that our show is going to watch. So now we care about whether or not we have Apu from the Quickie Mart or a fully fledged Indian man talking on this screen right now.
It's interesting that the pessimistic or realistic driver can still have really positive effects, though.
Totally. And I think there's always an intermarriage of this stuff. I don't think they're disparate things. I don't think you can say that politics, trade, culture, they're all this a part of one whole. And I think the cultural conversation's just been largely ignored until this point. And now I think there's a lot of listening going on, especially in this room, and I don't mean that facetiously, but not always in every room. So empathy is really important with how we approach this stuff, and, you know, really going, and this is just for those who, you know, find it important or useful. If I'm going to be inclusive, am I really walking in the shoes of the other person that I'm talking to, or am I just doing it because I have to right now as a directive? And I think the former just is healthier and safer and makes working easier. I think I've had way too many difficult conversations in my time working in the West as a brown woman, and to the point where I've probably disaffected people because it is difficult, you know, and I'm going, I know it's hard, but these things are not great. And just because people accept them doesn't mean that it makes it okay.
Yeah.
We have so much privilege in this country where most of us have most of our basic needs met, you know, so we can talk about stuff like feelings safety of our mental health. And so then let's do it. What's difficult is many communities don't even know how breadcrumbed they've been, because it has been a culture of obedience and a culture of gratitude and just walk your lane, just do the right thing and, you'll be okay. And don't spread your wings any wider than the lane allows you to. So, I don't know. It's a really lofty concept, but I like to have these conversations because it just opens up hearts to others' experiences, and that's the bottom line, really.
So well
Beautifully said. I feel kind of compelled to tell a story, but I don't know if it's going to make sense or link in. But I feel
Is this the time you made 100? I don't know if it's appropriate, but
so. We're 2 for 60.
the team needed me.
Yeah.
God, did they need me?
Yeah, chasing 380. So it was a bit. No,
I was meant to be 12th man, but I got promoted a little bit earlier that day.
more than a double promotion.
okay.
No, our dad came out here with his family in 1956, and when he was when they came out on a ship to Australia, and when he came out here, his parents were very careful to make sure that he didn't go out in the sun too much on the boat and had to stay inside, because at that point, coming to Australia, he was going to be held up against effectively what looked like a Dulux colour card of shades of colour, and he was the darkest in their family, and he might mean that the whole family didn't get let in. They'd get sent back to Sri Lanka. Yeah. And then when he came here, he sorry, I get quite emotional talking about it. He I think fell into that category that you've talked about it needing to be exceptional, and he worked so hard and was got the best mark he could.
4 till 10 every day after school studied.
Yeah.
With a 10-minute break to speak to mum on the phone.
Yeah, and did it and he became a dentist, and he worked the traditional story that you hear, and it just makes me so excited to hear the way you've talked today about a changing world in which people of multiple cultures and different backgrounds can live a life that doesn't have to follow one path.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I think you sharing that story, it enables so many others to also share in those stories that people might not have any idea of, and I think that's the power of storytelling now, and that's why the work I want to do now is saying, how do we get your father's story or someone else's and say, this is why I'm fighting for representation or why it's important? Because the history of this country is so marred. What you're talking about, which is a white Australia policy, I mean, it was only abolished in 1973, and my parents arrived the next decade into Perth. So you go, oh, holy crap, that would have been tough. And what your father experienced would have been tough. But that's a whole generation of people whose voices in relation to those very, very real traumas were quashed, and then we as the kids of these people have inherited all of this. And I don't know how it percolates or permeates through our bodies, but it does. And I think that the mass healing and, there's obviously a whole other question around Indigenous Australia, which I'm not equipped to talk about, but in terms of being someone whose parents arrived in this country, I just think that there is also a piece of healing that needs to happen there. And I think we've all been slowly assimilating and slowly figuring it out. And again, that's okay, because that's how the world goes, but it's also we just have so much space and time and privilege in this country where we can examine all of those questions. And I think, therefore, with our traditional spirituality, with what we've inherited, with this kind of presence of mind, it is just such an opening for increased consciousness about this stuff. And in sharing that, and for it to not be stigmatized or, get on with it and all of those other Australianisms, I think it would be empowering for a lot of people and very healing for even our parents' generation, who still walk around feeling the things that they felt. So anyway, thank you.
Are your parents so immensely proud of you?
I hope so. They better be by now.
What else do you
What
got
else?
to do?
Like, seriously, I'm just like, guys, surely there's like by now. Like, but no, it's what's lovely about coming home and being with my parents is that it's so, they've never ever actually made me feel like any of it was that awesome. True migrant parents. No, they are proud. And now they've started saying it to me. And I think that wasn't language that I received when I was growing up. I think my mum once said it when we went to the ballet, and I was invited to the ballet, and I was able to take like 10 people. And again, it was this very white art space. And all of a sudden I was there celebrated as an Indian actress and a dancer, and that's why I'd been brought into this institutional art space, and my mum was wearing a sari. And it was that moment we sat, there's the pink carpet of the Arts Centre. I love the Arts Centre because back in the day, one of my dance teachers, the guy in Richmond, used to perform there when there was a lot of arts funding available. And that was my first experience of live theatre and dance. And so to be in that same theatre with my mum and these family friends, she just looked at me and she just said, I hope you know that we're really proud of you.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, this is a full circle moment probably for her as well, who had her little girl saying, please take me to the Arts Centre, I want to dance there. And I guess that's interesting. The invitation is so important to someone like my mum. The fact that she is able to sit in that hall and be a welcome part of the audience. And it's not like the Spirit of India restaurant in, Craigieburn or whatever, which is no disrespect to them because that's great too. But that's the segregation of audience and where we belong, and that's what everyone's carrying with them. So I hope that in our generation we can just go, everyone feels like they can walk into any theatre and everyone's story is equally worthy of being told and received.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
We're doing another couple of
It's all
hours.
right. Yeah. All good.
I just, something that I often think about is like the role fame plays in our dreams and then in the reality. So like you have experienced extreme fame and I just wanted to know how, if there was a sense of belonging in being extremely famous and accepted by millions and millions of people. I know that people do chase this dream of fame, I think, for the reason of belonging.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I have thought about this because there was a time when I would come home and, like we'd get into an Uber and my dad would just be like, she's dressed so poorly just so she looks anonymous. I'm like, Dad, he'd pick me up from the airport and be in trackies and he'd be so disappointed. He's like, my daughter's a Bollywood actor. She just still looks like a grub from town. And he'd feel embarrassed because he had to reconcile. But, and I think I was in a way fighting the kind of trappings of what I was meant to be as this person from this industry and what it meant, because I was a girl from suburban Melbourne and that was what made me. And I didn't feel authentic in that belonging. It never felt right to me because there were so many layers of agency that had been stripped and just kind of the mold within which I had to fit. Like you're filling out a silhouette of this femme woman.
Oh, what a great way to put it. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, not because I'm a woman, just but it's like it's just such a good visual. Like I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
And it was like if I fit into that cardboard cutout, then it was like bang, you are a, just asteroid level star. But if you want to kind of change shape a little bit, then it's a little bit eerie and weird and we're not quite sure. And I was like, hold on, I derive belonging from my otherness in a sense. I derive my belonging from challenging what it means to be this nucleus and a part of this nucleus. And I was almost more comfortable, and maybe this is a sign I actually need some serious therapy, but like more comfortable at the periphery than I was at the nucleus because it allowed me to interrogate what it was that I was doing, whereas otherwise I had to just be a thing, like this static thing. And so, no, the fame and all of those elements that it brought for me, created a detachment, which is probably why ultimately I was like, let's go to Australia and see what it's like to build. Because now I get to build an authentic version. And you know what? I may or may not be as famous as I was or could have been if I continued to work in Bollywood. But that was the reason fundamentally. I was like, the lack of authenticity that comes with this just takes away the feeling of belonging that it was meant to provide.
Beautiful. Thanks.
Well, Pallavi and I have both really enjoyed your questions today. Thank you so much for No, it is.
Hugh, you've been so gracious.
It's okay.
Yeah.
No, it's just, I mean, I have just loved today's conversation so much. I particularly appreciate the insight to your world and the thought and reflection you've given it, and the way you're able to articulate it as well has been really lovely to sit here and listen to.
Thank you,
so
guys.
thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. An unpublished book continues to be unpublished, but look out for it.
Out soon, maybe.
Out soon, maybe. Thanks,
Right.
guys. No, I
Thank
appreciate it. Thanks for really good questions and making me feel safe.
Oh, good. That's good to hear. Thank you. Pallavi Sharda. It's really. I'll finish her name. Pallavi Sharda, not Pallavi Shah. Pallavi Sharda. It's just so. There's something really refreshing and inspiring about hearing someone really know what they want and go after it. And even just what she was saying about walking away from these huge opportunities in Bollywood and wanting to rebuild the authentic version of her is it's just very cool.
It's incredible,
yeah.
yeah. And I also feel like obviously she's incredibly intelligent because of we talked a bit about her education and how amazing she was at that, but just hearing her talk, it's just, I find it really incredible and lovely to speak to someone who is so intellectually curious and honest about their own life and the world in which they live and can talk about it with such clarity. It's really cool.
Yep.
Yeah. I had something I wanted to talk about though, coming off the back of this, that it's been something I've been thinking about for a while, and it became kind of evident in the interview. There was pre-interview, there was a bit of a discussion about you and I being Sri Lankan, Hugh, and having South Asian heritage. And then during the interview, she sort of directed the conversation to us a couple of times to talk about that. And the older I get, the more of a complex relationship I have with the dual heritage part of me, dual culturally, because I kind of feel like as a younger person, I used to, especially growing up, I used to think it was like, to be clear, I'm extremely proud of where my dad comes from. But as a younger person, I used to think it was really cool to be able to look the way I am. So for all intents and purposes, if you bumped into me on the street, I am probably of only English descent. I'm a very white, Caucasian looking guy. And I used to think, oh, that's cool that I can trick people and say I'm actually half Sri Lankan. But I felt more and more uncomfortable doing that the older I've gotten, to the point where I don't really bring it up anymore, because I find a sense of guilt and shame over the fact that I'm kind of claiming to be Sri Lankan when it's suitable for me, but I don't have any of the drawbacks that people who, the way Pallavi described it, of basically appearing and looking South Asian, experiencing things that our dad experienced growing up in Australia, of being victims of racism, having less opportunities in the workplace, all the negatives that come across as being a minority in Australia, and the complex relationship of the way white Australia has treated people of colour, which I alluded to, or didn't allude to, I said a specific example of in the episode. I've ended up, I don't know, I've got a complex relationship with it now, because I feel like I'm kind of picking and choosing when to hold on to use that without any of the negative consequences, and I'm therefore almost like a traitor to my cultural heritage, because I've never really properly engaged with it, apart from our childhood growing up with Granny. But even then, we didn't really speak that much about Sri Lanka. I know a little bit about Dad's upbringing there. He left when he was 8. So, and I've been back to Sri Lanka quite a few times, but I didn't visit our relatives that live there. So, yeah, I'm finding it a complex thing to navigate. So I almost felt a little bit hesitant to own it when she wanted me to, which
That's
is
really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't. How do I phrase this? It's a tricky one to explain. So for me, I find that so fascinating because I think I'm like and not that you aren't proud. I'm still in that like excited childlike phase of like just love that I'm part Sri Lankan.
Yeah.
And I don't think too much more that other than when I'm in Sri Lanka, I keep noticing that all men have the exact same legs as me. Insanely skinny legs. And I have similar facial features to Sri Lankan people, I've noticed.
Yeah.
I remember a former boss of mine said to me once when I told her, she said, "Oh, you've got a Sri Lankan nose and eyes."
Really?
Yeah. So maybe I feel like
maybe you feel like you do look a bit more.
I think I do. Obviously, not the skin color, the skin tone, but I do. Yeah, I don't know. And I love Sri Lanka and you do as well.
Yeah.
I love Sri Lankan people so much. I don't think any deeper than I just love that I'm like half from here, I guess. And you do as well. Yeah, I'm not saying you don't, but you've obviously just given it a bit more thought than I have.
Yeah, I don't want anyone to think that I'm saying anything other than the fact that similar to same thing as you're saying, of how proud I am. And when we go back to Sri Lanka, I'm like find it quite emotional, especially when I see old ladies because they all sound like Granny.
Yeah.
And it's quite, and some of the food that was cooked in Granny's house, I start smelling things from going what it was like to go see Granny's house. But I do feel, and I really don't want this to come across the wrong way, but a little bit stuck in the middle of like ashamed of the way that a lot of white Australia has, the history of white Australia with treatment of Aboriginal people, treatment of a lot of minorities, treatment of our dad when he came here to a degree, but also not really being able to claim Sri Lankanness either. So sort of stuck in the middle. And I'm aware that there are many people out there who that traversing those two worlds is far more traumatic. I guess my point is to say that I don't have to in the presence of other people. It's something I can do completely privately and internally because for all visual intents and purposes, no one would know anything else.
You're very aware of your privilege, I guess.
Yeah, extremely aware of my privilege.
Yeah.
Because I get to, which is the most privileged thing ever, I get to invoke it whenever I want.
Yeah.
And I can decide to deny it at other points as well, which is about as privileged as it gets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, even though my experience being Jewish growing up is very different, and there's a whole different set of things. I'm definitely not comparing or anything, but it just makes me think about it. And not from a super religious family, but definitely with grandparents, we did Shabbat dinner and things. And so I would go to school, and it was an Anglican school, and so there was, from as far as I knew, not another single Jewish person, in the school. And so I hid it. No one knew I was Jewish. And I would never, like if I couldn't do something on Friday night, I would just say I've got a family thing. I would never say it was like a Shabbat thing. Yeah. I was kind of ashamed of it. I was more embarrassed about it. I was like embarrassed because it was different. Yeah. And it wasn't until like my bar mitzvah when I was 13, and I had to invite friends from school to the bar mitzvah. And I was so scared about them being there because they were going to see me in the yarmulke and in synagogue reading Hebrew in front of everyone. And I was so terrified because it was like, oh, this is the secret I kept. The reason I bring it up is because the older I get, the more proud of it I am, I think, and I embrace the difference. Maybe isn't the right word, but I embrace that part of me because it is very, very special, and it represents so much, like with family and my grandparents and stuff. But definitely growing up as a kid, it was I hit it quite a lot. Yeah.
And so this is probably bigger questions that have much bigger context, but it's interesting that like there's a broader cultural something going on that Hugh and I felt growing up. Like it was like I wanted to drop it into conversation as much as I can because it was a interesting thing, and I felt like it was cool to be different in that way. Whereas for you, it felt like you needed to hide it. But this is probably
Well, it's similar in the sense that, like, being Jewish, you can pick and choose as well. There is a privilege in that, and I can sort of pick and choose if I'm around like a group of Jewish people, or if I'm, in a meeting with someone who's Jewish, I'll definitely say that I'm Jewish because it's a way to connect and it's a way to. But then if I am with people, like when I'm at school as a kid and I feel embarrassed about it because I don't understand it and I don't want to be different, I can hide it. And there's a great, like yourself, like you're saying, Josh, there's a great privilege in being able to do that, which I only, as an older person now am aware of.
Yeah. So it was just something that was present for me throughout the interview, and it's something that I want to be much more. It just makes me want to go to Sri Lanka again and meet some relatives and actually like really start to engage in our specific cultural Sri Lankan story.
Prepare to hear a lot of singing.
Yeah.
Mum and Dad went and they just got sung at for about 4 hours by every family member they met.
Wonderful.
Them. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds good at first.
Originals or covers?
I think they were a good question. I don't know.
Wasn't like a pub cover band.
I don't,
They just did Daryl Braithwaite covers.
Yes.
Anyway, Pallavi Sharda, I felt so privileged to meet her, and I know you guys felt the same. She's just an amazing person.
Yep.
Absolutely.